"No one wants me, but I can raise your child," said the obese girl. "Then marry me." Mountain Man said. The autumn wind carried the scent of pine and wood smoke through the narrow streets of Fort Bridger, Wyoming Territory, 1816. Martha Henderson stood behind the trading post counter, her broad shoulders hunched as she pretended not to notice the whispers. At 23, she had grown accustomed to the stares, the sidelong glances, the way conversations quieted when she entered a room. "That's the Henderson girl," someone murmured. "Poor thing. Built like a bear, that one." Martha's hands trembled as she wrapped a bundle of dried beans in brown paper. Her fingers, though thick and capable, moved with surprising grace. She had learned long ago to find solace in useful work, in the quiet dignity of tasks completed well. The bell above the door chimed. Martha looked up to see Samuel Blackwood stride in, a mountain man whose reputation preceded him like thunder before a storm. He was tall and lean, with dark hair that touched his shoulders and eyes the color of a winter storm. In his arms, he carried a small bundle wrapped in furs. "I need supplies," Samuel said, his voice rough from disuse, "and I need them quick." Martha nodded, moving to gather items from the shelves. As she worked, she heard it, a soft whimper from the bundle in his arms. Her hands stilled. "Is that—" she began. "A child," Samuel interrupted, his jaw tight. "My daughter. Her mother died 3 days past. Fever took her quick." The bundle stirred, and a tiny face emerged from the furs. The baby couldn't have been more than 6 months old, with dark eyes that seemed too large for her small face. She was crying, a thin, desperate sound that spoke of hunger and confusion. Martha's heart clenched. Without thinking, she came around the counter and reached for the child. "May I?" Samuel hesitated, then passed the baby to her. The moment Martha cradled the infant against her chest, something shifted in the room. The crying softened, then stopped. The baby nuzzled against Martha's ample bosom, seeking comfort. "She hasn't stopped crying since—" Samuel's voice broke. He cleared his throat roughly. "Since her mother passed." Martha swayed gently, her body moving in an instinctive rhythm. She hummed low in her throat, a melody her own mother had sung. The baby's tiny fist curled around Martha's finger. "She's hungry," Martha said softly, "and frightened. Have you been feeding her?" "Goat's milk when I can get her to take it. Mostly she just screams." Samuel's face was haggard, marked by sleepless nights and fresh grief. "Come with me," Martha said. She carried the baby through the back door of the trading post to the small cabin she shared with her father. The proprietor was away on a supply run, leaving Martha to mind the store alone. Inside, Martha prepared a thin gruel with goat's milk and a touch of honey. She sat in the rocking chair by the fire and fed the baby with infinite patience, using a clean cloth dipped in the mixture. The infant sucked eagerly, her tiny hands grasping at Martha's fingers. Samuel stood in the doorway, watching. His expression was unreadable, but something in his eyes had softened. "What's her name?" Martha asked. "Rebecca, after my mother." Samuel moved closer, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. "I don't know what to do with her. I'm a trapper, a hunter. I live in the high country, weeks from any settlement. A baby can't survive that life." Martha's throat tightened. She had heard stories like this before. Mountain men who lost their wives, left with children they couldn't care for. Usually the babies were given to mission orphanages or handed off to distant relatives. "She needs a mother," Martha said quietly. "Babies need more than just food. They need holding, singing to, gentle voices in the dark." "I know." Samuel crouched beside the chair, his large, scarred hand reaching out to touch his daughter's cheek. "I know what I have to do. I have a sister in St. Louis. She'll take Rebecca, raise her proper." The words hung in the air between them. Martha felt the baby's weight in her arms, the trust in that tiny body. She had spent her whole life being told she would never have this, never have a child of her own, never have a family. No man wanted a wife built like a ox, as one suitor had so cruelly said. Or, Martha heard herself say, the words coming from some deep hidden place, I could raise her. Samuel's head snapped up. What? Martha's heart hammered, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. I know no one wants me. I'm too big, too plain. But I can raise a child. I'm strong. I can work. I know how to care for a baby. I helped birth half the children in this settlement. I can... Then marry me, Samuel said. The room fell silent except for the crackling of the fire. Martha stared at him, certain she had misheard. What did you say? Samuel stood, his movements deliberate. Marry me. If you can raise my daughter, if you're willing to take her on, then marry me. Come to the mountains. We'll make a life there. You don't want me, Martha whispered. You just need someone to care for your child. You're right, Samuel said bluntly. I need someone for Rebecca, but I've watched you these past minutes, the way you hold her, the way she quieted in your arms. My wife. His voice caught. Sarah tried everything. Rebecca cried day and night, but with you she's peaceful. Martha felt tears prick her eyes. That's not love. That's just practicality. Maybe. Samuel's gaze was steady. But it's honest. I won't lie and say I love you. I barely know you, but I can promise I'll provide for you, protect you, treat you with respect. And if you can love my daughter, that's more than most marriages start with. Martha looked down at the baby sleeping in her arms. Rebecca's face was relaxed now, her tiny mouth slightly open. In sleep, she looked like any baby, perfect, innocent, full of possibility. All her life, Martha had been told her only value lay in her ability to work. She could lift heavy loads, process dozens of hides, work from dawn to dusk without complaint. But no one had ever suggested she might have value as a mother, as a woman capable of tenderness. I don't know anything about living in the mountains, she said finally. I'll teach you. I've never been more than 20 miles from this fort. The mountains are beautiful. You'll see things most people only dream of. People will say you married me out of desperation. Samuel's expression hardened. Let them. I've never cared what people say. Martha took a shaky breath. She thought of her father, who loved her but pitied her. She thought of the endless parade of young women who came through the trading post, girls half her size who would marry and have families of their own. She thought of growing old in this place, useful but unloved, capable but alone. Yes, she whispered, I'll marry you. They wed 3 days later in a simple ceremony performed by the fort's chaplain. Martha wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit her larger frame. Samuel stood beside her in clean buckskins, his face solemn as he repeated his vows. Martha's father cried as he gave her away, though whether from joy or sorrow she couldn't tell. You're sure about this, girl? He asked as he walked her down the short aisle. You're sure this is what you want? I'm sure, Martha said, and meant it. After the ceremony, they stayed in Martha's cabin for one night. Samuel slept on the floor with Rebecca in a makeshift cradle beside him. Martha lay awake in her narrow bed, listening to the baby's soft breathing, wondering what her life would become. The next morning, they prepared to leave. Samuel had already arranged for pack mules and supplies. Martha packed her few belongings, clothes, her mother's Bible, a few cooking implements. She said goodbye to her father at dawn. Write when you can, her father said gruffly, embracing her. Let me know you're safe. I will, Papa. And Martha. He cupped her face in his weathered hands. Don't let him make you feel small. You're worth 10 of most folk, big or not. The journey to Samuel's cabin took 8 days. They traveled through valleys and over mountain passes, following trails that seemed to disappear into the wilderness. Martha had never seen such country. Endless forests of pine and aspen, streams so clear she could count the stones on the bottom, meadows full of wildflowers that stretched to the horizon. Rebecca rode in a carrier on Martha's back, a cradle board Samuel had made from bent willow and soft leather. The baby seemed content with the arrangement, watching the world pass with wide, curious eyes. Samuel spoke little during the journey, but his silence wasn't unkind. He simply seemed unused to conversation. He helped Martha over difficult terrain, showed her how to read trail signs, taught her which plants were safe to eat. At night, he built fires and prepared meals while Martha tended to Rebecca. On the 5th night, as they sat by the fire, Samuel finally spoke of his late wife. "Sarah was Shoshone," he said, staring into the flames. "I met her 4 years ago when I was trading at a Shoshone camp. She was beautiful, small as a bird. Her father didn't want her to marry a white man, but she insisted." He paused. "She never really took to mountain life. She missed her people, her sisters. When Rebecca came, she was happy for a time. But then the fever." His voice broke. Martha reached out instinctively and placed her hand on his arm. Samuel looked down at her touch, surprised. "I'm sorry," Martha said softly. "I'm sorry for your loss." Samuel nodded. After a moment, he placed his hand over hers. It was the first time they had touched with anything like tenderness. "Sarah would have liked you," he said finally. "She would have been grateful her daughter had someone like you." They reached Samuel's cabin on the 8th day. It was larger than Martha had expected, built of solid logs with a stone chimney and real glass windows, a luxury in the wilderness. Inside it was sparse but clean, with a large fireplace, a table Samuel had built himself, and a rope bed in the corner. "I'll build another room," Samuel said, setting down their packs. "For privacy. It'll take a few weeks, but—" "It's fine," Martha interrupted. She was too exhausted to care about propriety. "Right now, I just need to clean this baby and get her settled. Victor." Over the following weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Samuel would rise before dawn to check his trap lines or hunt. Martha would wake with Rebecca, feed her, wash clothes in the nearby stream, prepare meals. The baby thrived under Martha's care, growing plumper and more alert with each passing day. Martha discovered she had a talent for frontier life. Her size, which had been a source of shame at the fort, became an asset in the mountains. She could carry heavy loads of water, split wood for hours without tiring, process game with efficient strength. Samuel began to rely on her in ways that went beyond caring for Rebecca. "You're stronger than most men I know," he said one evening as she hauled a deer carcass onto the work table for butchering. "I've always been strong," Martha replied, not sure if it was a compliment or an observation. "It's a good thing. Out here, strength keeps you alive." As autumn deepened toward winter, Samuel worked on adding a second room to the cabin. Martha watched him in the evenings, his sure hands shaping logs, his body moving with practiced efficiency. She found herself noticing things about him, the way his hair curled at the nape of his neck, the rare smile that transformed his stern face, the gentleness in his voice when he spoke to Rebecca. She reminded herself that their marriage was one of convenience. Samuel needed a mother for his child. She'd accepted that bargain with open eyes. But sometimes, in quiet moments, she felt a longing for something more. Winter came suddenly to the mountains. Snow fell for 3 days straight, piling in drifts against the cabin walls. They were trapped inside, the world reduced to the circle of firelight and the sound of wind howling through the pines. Rebecca was teething, fussy and uncomfortable. Martha walked her for hours, singing soft songs, rubbing whiskey on her swollen gums. Samuel watched from his place by the fire, carving a wooden rattle for his daughter. "You're good with her," he said one night. "Better than I could ever be." "She's easy to love," Martha replied, settling into the rocking chair with the baby. "Is she the only one?" Martha looked up, startled by the question. Samuel was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What do you mean?" "Is Rebecca the only one you love in this family?" His voice was carefully neutral. Martha's heart began to race. I don't understand what you're asking." Samuel set down his carving and moved to kneel beside her chair. "I'm asking if there's room in your heart for a broken-down mountain man who's been too much of a fool to tell you how he feels." "Samuel, let me finish." He took her free hand in both of his. When I asked you to marry me, I told you it was practical, that I needed someone for Rebecca. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. Martha's breath caught. What's the whole truth? The truth is, I watched you in that trading post before Sarah died. I came in once to buy supplies, and you were helping an old woman choose fabric. You were so patient with her, so kind, and I thought, now there's a woman with a good heart. Then, when Sarah took sick and I knew I had to come back to you. Tears streamed down Martha's face. You're just saying this because I'm saying it because it's true. I've been a coward, Martha. I was afraid to tell you how I felt, afraid you'd think I was using you. But these past months, watching you with Rebecca, working beside you, sharing this life, I've fallen in love with you. Completely. Absolutely. Martha shook her head, unable to believe what she was hearing. Men don't love women who look like me. I'm too big, You're perfect, Samuel interrupted fiercely. You're strong and capable and kind. You're beautiful in ways that matter. And when you hold my daughter, when you sing to her at night, when you smile at me over breakfast, Martha, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Martha couldn't speak. The words she had longed to hear her entire life were finally being said, and they felt both impossible and absolutely right. I love you, Samuel said again, and I'm asking if you could love me too, not out of duty or gratitude, but truly. Martha looked down at the baby sleeping in her arms, then back at Samuel's earnest face. She thought of all the years she had spent believing she was unlovable, all the time she had convinced herself that being useful was enough. I already do, she whispered. I think I have for weeks now. I just didn't dare believe. Samuel stood and pulled her up, careful not to wake Rebecca. He kissed her then, deeply and thoroughly, one hand cradling the back of her head. Martha felt something break open inside her chest, some long frozen place thawing in the warmth of his touch. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying. I'm going to love you for the rest of my life, Samuel said. I'm going to make sure you never doubt your worth again. Samuel, Martha interrupted, laughing through her tears. Less talking, more kissing. He grinned, that rare transforming smile, and obliged. Spring came to the mountains in an explosion of life. The snow melted, revealing carpets of wildflowers. Streams swelled with runoff, and the woods filled with the songs of returning birds. Martha stood in the doorway of their cabin, watching Samuel teach Rebecca to walk in the meadow. The baby was nearly a year old now, sturdy and laughing, with her father's dark hair and her mother's delicate features. She toddled between Samuel's hands, shrieking with delight every time she took a few steps on her own. Martha's hand moved unconsciously to her own belly, where a new life was growing. She and Samuel had discovered her pregnancy a month ago, and the joy on his face had been worth everything. Every whisper she had endured, every cruel word, every moment of doubt. Come here, Samuel called, waving her over. Rebecca wants to show you something. Martha walked down to the meadow, and Rebecca immediately lurched toward her with determined steps. Martha caught her as she stumbled, swinging her up into her arms. Mama, Rebecca said clearly, patting Martha's face with chubby hands. It was the first time she had said the word. Martha felt her eyes fill with tears, something that happened far too easily these days, pregnancy making her emotional. Did you hear that? She asked Samuel. I heard. He pulled both of them into his arms, creating a circle of warmth and love. She knows who her mama is. They stood like that for a long moment, surrounded by wildflowers and mountains, while Rebecca babbled happily and pulled at Martha's hair. I never imagined this, Martha said softly. This life, this happiness. Neither did I, Samuel admitted. When Sarah died, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd just survive, get through each day. But then he kissed the top of her head. You brought me back to life. We brought each other back, Martha corrected. That evening, After Rebecca was asleep in her small bed, Samuel and Martha sat together by the fire. He had his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into his warmth. "Tell me about the baby," he said, his hand moving to rest on her belly. "What do you hope for?" "Healthy," Martha said immediately. "That's all, a healthy baby." "Boy or girl?" "I don't care, as long as they're strong," Samuel smiled. "They'll be strong. With you as their mother, how could they be anything else?" "Samuel, I mean it. He turned her face toward his. "You're the strongest person I know, Martha, not just in body but in spirit. You took a chance on a stranger and his motherless baby. You left everything you knew to come to this wilderness. You've never complained, never regretted. That takes a kind of courage I've rarely seen." "I did it for love," Martha said simply. "I know, and I thank God every day that you did." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the flames dance. Then Samuel spoke again. "I want to tell you something I should have said months ago." "What is it?" "When I first asked you to marry me, you said no one wanted you. Do you remember?" Martha's cheeks flushed. "I remember." "I want you to know, you were wrong. I wanted you. From the moment you took Rebecca in your arms, I wanted you. Not just as a mother for my child, but as a wife, as a partner, as the woman I would spend my life with." "Samuel, let me finish. I was too much of a coward to say it then. I hid behind practicality and convenience because I was afraid of being vulnerable again, afraid of loving and losing. But Martha, you deserve to know the truth. You were always wanted. You were always loved. You were always enough." Martha turned to fully face him, taking his hands in hers. "And you deserve to know that you saved me. Not from poverty or loneliness, but from a life where I believed I was worth less than others. You showed me that I was deserving of love. You gave me a family. You gave me everything." They kissed then, deeply and slowly, taking their time. When they finally pulled apart, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Martha Blackwood." "I love you too, Samuel Blackwood." The baby was born in late autumn, as the first snows dusted the peaks. Martha labored through a long night with Samuel at her side, holding her hand, wiping her face with cool cloths. When the baby finally emerged with a lusty cry, Martha felt a rush of relief and joy so intense it left her breathless. "It's a boy," Samuel said, his voice thick with emotion. He placed the baby on Martha's chest, and she looked down at her son's red, wrinkled face. "He's perfect," she whispered. "He's beautiful, like his mother." They named him Thomas after Martha's father. Rebecca, now walking and talking, was fascinated by her baby brother. She would stand by his cradle for hours, babbling to him, bringing him her favorite toys. "Gentle," Martha would remind her. "Baby Thomas is still very small." "My baby," Rebecca would declare proudly. As winter settled over the mountains, the Blackwood family nested in their warm cabin. Samuel would return from checking his trap lines to find Martha nursing Thomas by the fire while Rebecca played at her feet. The sight never failed to move him. This family he had thought he would never have again. One evening, as a blizzard raged outside, Samuel sat down beside Martha and took her hand. "I've been thinking," he said. "About what?" "About how lucky I am, about how different my life could have been if you'd said no that day." Martha shifted Thomas to her other breast. "I couldn't say no. Not when I held Rebecca, not when I looked at you. I know, but you could have. Many women would have." He paused. "I want you to know, if I could go back and do it all again, I wouldn't change a thing. Except maybe I'd tell you I loved you sooner. You told me when the time was right." "Did I?" Samuel smiled ruefully. "I think I was a fool to wait so long." "Maybe, but we got here eventually." Rebecca toddled over and climbed into Samuel's lap. "Dada," she said, patting his face. "Story? What story do you want to hear?" "How Mama came." Martha and Samuel exchanged glances. It had become Rebecca's favorite story. the tale of how Martha had come to their family. Samuel settled Rebecca more comfortably in his lap. Well, once upon a time, there was a brave, kind woman who lived in a trading post, and a sad mountain man came to her with his baby daughter who wouldn't stop crying. As Samuel told the story, Martha felt Thomas grow heavy in her arms as he fell asleep. She looked around their cabin, at the fire crackling in the hearth, at Rebecca listening raptly to her father, at the shelves Samuel had built filled with her preserves and medicines, at the cradle he'd carved for Thomas. This was her life now, this family, this love. It was everything she had never dared to dream of. "And that's how your mama came to us," Samuel finished, "and we all lived happily ever after." "Again," Rebecca demanded. "Tomorrow," Martha said, smiling. "Right now, it's time for little girls to go to bed." After Rebecca was tucked in and Thomas was settled in his cradle, Martha and Samuel finally had a moment alone. They stood by the window, watching the snow fall, Samuel's arms wrapped around Martha from behind. "Happy?" he asked. "More than I ever thought possible," Martha replied. She turned in his arms to face him. "Thank you, Samuel, for seeing me, for choosing me, for loving me. Thank you for saving my daughter, for giving me a son, for making this cabin a home." He kissed her softly. "For being everything I didn't know I needed." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other as the storm raged outside and their children slept peacefully nearby. In the morning, Samuel would check the trap lines, and Martha would begin her daily work. Rebecca would help her make bread, and Thomas would sleep and nurse and grow. They would live their simple life in the mountains, surrounded by wilderness and filled with love. It was the life Martha had been told she would never have, the husband, the children, the home. But here she was, living proof that sometimes the best stories are the ones no one expects. As she drifted off to sleep that night, warm in Samuel's arms, Martha thought about the girl she had been, standing behind that trading post counter, believing herself unworthy of love. If she could go back and tell that girl anything, it would be this: you are enough. You are worthy. Your time is coming. And it had come in ways more beautiful than she ever could have imagined.